Can you hear us okay? Thumbs up? Okay, see you. Thanks.
Okay. So hi, everyone. We are officially going to call to order our Cook County Commission on Social Innovation meeting for October 2023. With that said, I will call attendance so we can make sure to note anybody that is virtual or in person. Please state that you are here. Vice Chair Lane is present. Commissioner Aglepe, Mayor Ellsbury, Commissioner Elston.
Present.
Is he online?
Yes, yes.
Okay, he's online. Okay. Commissioner Anderson, Commissioner Brutus,
Present.
Commissioner Caliento,
Present.
Commissioner Cooley,
Present.
ex officio criticals,
I'm here.
Commissioner De Laurentiis, Commissioner DuBois,
Present.
Commissioner Durla, Commissioner Flores, Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner Guajardo, Alderperson Hatton, Commissioner Killen, Howard Mills is
Present.
online, present. Commissioner Malone, Commissioner Raymer, Commissioner Rice, Commissioner Schleiser, and Commissioner Thompson. Okay, we've noted who is present. We will begin with public testimony. So just as a reminder, public testimony requests or written comments can be submitted up to 24 hours in advance of the meeting to the following email address. That's 7thdistrict.office@gmail.com. Again, it's 7th, the word district.office@gmail.com. Andrea, did we get any public testimony for today's meeting?
No, there's no public testimony.
Thank you. We will proceed with approval of the minutes. I'm assuming everybody received the minutes. They should be in your packet. Were there any edits to the minutes? Any of the members? And anybody online, if you'd like to raise your hand at any point, feel free to do so. We have someone over here that can help us handle that. So I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes by Commissioner Brutus, second by Commissioner Cooley. Can we get a second? Thank you so much. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. They're approved. We will then proceed with our special guest. So I will turn it over to Vice Chair Lane.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. We are privileged today to have two members of the leadership of the Center for Justice Innovation who are meeting with us virtually from New York. The center touches on all stages of the justice system, from arrest through reintegration into the community, but perhaps most important for our purposes, their mission is to seek to reduce the need for justice system involvements in the first place. They work closely with systems and communities and are uniquely positioned to bridge the gap between them. So let me identify our two witnesses, and I'm very grateful for your participation today. And I will defer to you as to who speaks in which order. but we have with us Courtney Bryan, who's the executive director of the Center for Justice Innovation. She oversees an annual budget of more than $80 million and 600 employees. She is deeply committed to criminal justice reform. And Layman Lee, who is the director of the Neighborhood Safety Initiative at the center. Program is the lead technical assistance and implementation partner in the Mayor's Action Plan for Neighborhood Safety, which is seeking to strengthen community well-being in 30 public housing developments across New York City. For our purposes, they are here kind of looking at their experiences in New York City neighborhoods most impacted by crime, poverty, systemic racism, and disinvestment. And they're going to propose to us how the county might successfully leverage the power of people as problem solvers. So I will defer to the two of you, Ms. Lee and Ms. Bryan, as to which order you'd like to testify. Welcome. The floor is yours. We're grateful to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes,
Yeah.
loud and clear.
Yes.
Great. So I'm Courtney and I'm joined by my colleague Layman. I'm going to start for a few minutes and then turn it over to Layman. And really my role is to kind of set up, thank you so much for sharing a bit about the center, who we are. So to share a little bit about that more and sort of this evolution in our work to focus on community safety, sort of outside the legal system approaches to safety. And then highlight one of the initiatives that we wanted to bring to you today, in the hopes that it may inspire some interest of your own in looking at some of these strategies. And I'll say we have worked in Cook County in the past, most recently or most notably with the Community Justice Center in I think it's North Lawndale, the Restorative Justice Center. That kind of came a few years ago after some collaboration with us and the court system, Judge Evans in particular, in trying to bring community justice to Chicago and a sort of neighborhood-based approach. So we've been really pleased to have that connection to Cook County for a number of years, and then have some other relationships and partnerships that have touched Cook County over the last now 25 years that the organization's been in existence. So we, as Marc shared, and Layman, thank you. I think you're the one. I certainly could not share a screen and move forward on the slides. So I think it's you, Layman, who's doing that. If we move to the next slide, just again, who we are. We're a national organization. We work mostly in New York City on the ground, and I can talk, and that's why you'll hear the example today comes from New York City. But we work in every state around the country, helping both to improve the legal system, often very focused on the criminal justice system, criminal legal system, helping to create a more fair, effective, and humane legal system. But we also are working to create safe and thriving communities. And we're doing that through a lot of the community safety work that you're going to hear about today. So we're running programs. We can kind of go to the next slide, Layman. We're running programs, direct service programs on the ground here, mostly again in New York City. An array of projects, starting with the Midtown Community Court that was established 30 years ago to look at a new way of handling low-level offending in the Midtown area of Manhattan, connecting people to job training, alternative to incarceration programs like drug treatment, mental health services, access to housing, all recognizing that there were underlying social issues that were bringing people through the justice system. And that has really been the platform on which we have expanded our work over the last few years, last 25 years. The Midtown and Red Hook Community Justice Centers are really kind of most known, I think, around the country in terms of our work, because we've been at the forefront of advancing what we've called community justice within the legal system, really trying to use community-based solutions instead of jail or fines and fees to solve and improve outcomes in the courts, but also really helping to strengthen the connection between the court system and the community that it serves, and have developed those ideas and then kind of grown the concept of what we call problem-solving justice and sort of people-centered justice throughout New York City, not only in the criminal court, but in housing, looking to reduce evictions, in the family court system as well. And then most recently, our community-based work, which we're going to focus on, that really is about leveraging residents and people in their own neighborhoods to identify the problems that are leading to unsafe and conditions and fear, and then working and supporting them and helping develop those solutions. We also, so that's a big part of our organization, is direct service, but we also are a research institution. We believe in science. We believe in data and evidence to drive the solutions that we come up with, and that should be part of the justice systems and the kind of government's approach to solving problems. So we both have researchers that are evaluating our own operating programs, but that are also conducting independent evaluation and studying problems in the field and contributing new thinking and research to help improve the justice system. And then the third big area of our work, our training and expert assistance, is really working, that's that national work, working around the country to help local justice, mostly justice practitioners, reformers, people who are interested in new ideas and improving their justice systems, working with them to help implement those ideas. So working really directly with practitioners in the field to implement on what we think and what we have learned are good ideas. So that's kind of the cornerstone of the center. Let's go to the next slide, Layman. And this is the sort of transition into this, what I'm calling community safety work, which is recognizing that the legal system isn't going to solve the problems of community safety alone, if at all, in many cases. And the kind of evolution of that work for us really came from work that we have done in a few neighborhoods in New York City, particularly starting with the Brownsville Community Justice Center, that instead of having a court at the sort of nexus and as the kind of organizing principle for the community safety and community justice work we were doing, we really looked to building resident power and support, and kind of looking at alternatives to the legal system and complements to the legal system to generate safety and opportunity in a neighborhood, for those of you who don't know Brownsville, that has been just divested in for many years, high levels of poverty and violence, crime, neglect, all of the indicators of a divested in neighborhood. And we have kind of started doing some thinking about how to bring greater safety and opportunity to that neighborhood through some of the strategies that we're going to talk about today. So it has kind of now become a new growing area of work and focus for us, is working not only in New York City, but hopefully with other jurisdictions around the country to implement some of the ideas that we have kind of germinated here in New York, and adapt them to their own communities to drive more resident-led, resident-engaged community safety in their cities. So the next slide, I think, is the transition really to you, Layman, who's going to talk about one of those initiatives. And the reason we wanted to choose this one is because the Neighborhood Safety Initiatives program really works in, as you heard, 30 different public housing developments. Layman can share a little about the history there. But it also is a really great example of working with government and this kind of connection between the community and government. That's often a role that the center we kind of play, is to help build that bridge between government and community organizations and community residents. And so the neighborhood safety initiatives effort really, I think, has taken that to the next level, and I hope offers some inspiration for Cook County or for other jurisdictions. So I'm going to turn it to Layman, my fantastic colleague who's been at the forefront of this work for many years. We're going to go through quickly, and then we really are eager to have discussion and can even pull up some slides of examples for you all to see if, depending on how the discussion goes. So Layman, all you.
Hi, once again, my name is Layman Lee, and I have the wonderful privilege of being the Director of Neighborhood Safety Initiatives. I actually started this work as a placemaking manager in Brownsville very many years ago, and now have the privilege of seeing the impact of the center's work from a neighborhood level to a citywide level. So very pleased to be here to talk about that work today. So neighborhood safety initiatives, we work to improve public safety by training local residents, agency partners, and key community stakeholders in organizing, problem solving, human-centered design, and overall just working together to re-envision public spaces to promote safety and well-being. Sorry. So we do this in 3 ways: by investing in resident networks and their capacity to organize for change. Once again, transforming public spaces. You'll hear that a lot, into equitable, vibrant, and safe public spaces, and influencing policy change. Sorry about that. So the first bucket of investing in residents is definitely like an important cornerstone of our work. It's important for us to stipend stakeholder teams, build capacity and train residents. Resource and network connection is important, as well as making sure that our stakeholder teams have a lot of visibility and credit. We both hire and train and support community organizers, recruit local leaders into intergenerational teams. They learn how to design and implement social programs and physical projects, and they manage the community action plans. We also, like Courtney said, look at data. We identify what the issues are, look at that data, understand why those issues exist, and that's where we develop our action plans from. And also residents are trained in participatory action research in order to both decide the impact that they're trying to make and evaluate it. And yeah, we train them and all the things that we said above. And once again, it's unique in that they are truly working in with multi-sector partners. Residents are working monthly amongst themselves, but also with city agency partners, broad range from housing to police to public mental health partners, youth partners, in order to just solve local issues. And yeah, they work together to address public concerns and promote the quality of life. It's really important for us that, because we're in these neighborhoods, we're there long term, and we can definitely see the success of residents being in this program. And we really take a lot of great pride in that. Residents are more than just like going to weekly meetings to discuss issues, but we're building their capacity as leaders. And one of the wonderful examples are of Jeanette Salceda, whose photos you see on the right. And she's a lifelong resident of Castle Hill Houses in the Bronx. She was once a caretaker of NYCHA and an operations manager for Accessoride. I don't know if you guys have that in Chicago, but it's like just like a public, just a public bus that helps shuttle people from place to place if public transit is not easy for them to use. So she was one of the first people to do that. And at 49 years old, she's a mother of 3 humans, and she likes to say 2 furry babies. And she spent her whole life really working to improve the lives of others. So one day she was asked by, and I think her neighbor wasn't asked, her neighbor, Miss Brown, kept telling her that she needs to meet this young man, Louis Rosa, who at the time was like map engagement coordinator, and they hit it off. They have very similar goals, and even though he was younger, she considered him her mentor because he helped her see that that her original job of helping people navigate the city was not dissimilar of her role as a local leader to help residents like navigate the city and how to solve issues on their own. And so she took that to heart, and they worked together to improve. What you see here is a basketball court. Before, I wish I included the before picture, but this was, I bet you can imagine, I'll paint the picture of like a typical neglected asphalt, like basketball court that had roots coming out of it, like large cracks, like paint faded, and no one was playing on it. It's located behind, at the time, the notorious boot building, where there was a lot of drug dealing and other antisocial behaviors. So one of the first projects they all wanted to tackle was renovating this basketball court for the community to change how people were interacting with that space. It looks amazing. It's definitely incredibly professional. Our city agency partners use this all the time as like a sample of, or an example of how this kind of like public-private cross-sector partnership can work. And now she is elected by her peers to become, she's now like the TA president of like over 5,000 people of this development, and has succeeded her predecessor, Lewis, and was also elected by her peers to be the map engagement coordinator. So this is definitely like a huge success. I think normally we don't envision one person to hold all this power in their community. But Jeanette definitely is like the person who's like democratically like says that there's no change without input from her community. So I can understand why her community puts their faith in her. And so you've heard us talk a lot about public space and the importance of transforming public space. We definitely see them as like physical manifestations of this initiative and our work to make sure that, that they're welcoming and promote everyone's well-being. And the past few years, these action plans, we've implemented everything leading from community input first, of course, anywhere from community gardens to improving things like basketball courts, wayfinding projects, murals, lighting installations in areas where residents feel unsafe, pop-up outdoor programs with movable kiosks and shipping containers, which are really popular right now. And yeah, they're just opportunities for people to solve problems together, but they're able to physically see in their environment how they were able to collectively reimagine and reinvent their public space. It definitely, for us, people respond that they feel more pride and a connection to the places that they've worked on. And this on your left is a really wonderful example of all of that. This is in Wagner Houses in Harlem. It's a over 6,000 square foot green space that at the time was notorious for just some antisocial behavior. You can see like there's two shipping containers that kind of come together at this V, and because it was really dark, definitely there were things that were happening there that made residents very scared of crossing this green space. It was used as like an unofficial dog park. People would go out of their way to not come to the space. So all these resident stakeholders came together and said out of that, this was definitely central to where they wanted to improve their neighborhood. And so, they turned a vacant, unsafe lot into an open plaza with concrete pathways because people were still a little bit scared of the grass at the moment, and a large stage for performances. And this is truly, and I know a lot of people say this, but this space has truly become a neighborhood hub that is stewarded by residents. Management doesn't really have to take care of it very much. You see residents taking care of it all the time. Because there are always issues with the community center or senior center in terms of like having space for themselves. This is the site of very many birthdays or food giveaways during the pandemic to, quinceañeras, all that the community wants to use it for, and they maintain the calendar themselves. So we definitely see this as a very successful example of how transforming public space can lead to just the community coming together to steward and change the way, change the perception of the space. And definitely another tenet of our work is influencing policy. We really see our goal is to bridge a gap between policymakers and community members. We definitely often see ourselves as navigating, we're really capable of like navigating the language between, I think, like government and community and negotiating resources and the goals of both. We also train and work with residents to identify policy issues and discuss them with representatives of city agencies and other stakeholders. In addition to a kind of local participatory budgeting process in which thousands of residents come together to identify the action plan project that they want to see yearly. They also work on a annual policy summit, which is like an interactive, like few months of learning and idea sharing and a creation of like a citywide policy agenda across the 5 boroughs. And over time, in our years working on a mayoral initiative called Neighborhoods, that we've learned that we've been able to change the way they talk about public safety. So that's more than just policing, because we know that communities feel that safety is more than just about numbers. And so we've brought in the impact of this initiative to really think about how health and well-being, improving the built environment, economic stability, safety and justice, and youth development. We've expanded NYCHA's public projects beyond murals and community gardens to dismantling fences and now incorporating public plazas, open air public plazas as a part of their community projects. And they also learned from our youth council. At the time, if you believe it, a lot of the city summer employment programs were just like open, youth signed up, but they would ask youth to sign up and fill slots for summer employment with the carrot of like earning a wage for the summer, but they never told youth what they were signing up for. So they didn't see a lot of the slots were unfilled. And with the feedback from the youth council, they now realize that it's important for every summer employment program to actually, believe it or not, inform youth about what they're signing up for. So now they consult with youth from the youth council around interest-based programming and job opportunities, which is really wonderful. So this is our process. And just really quickly, in sum, we are often invited to come to a neighborhood or a city to solve a general problem, but we never have a top-down approach to identifying what the solution may be. We always start with convening stakeholders, and definitely it's important for us that we definitely work with residents who are marginalized, most impacted by the issue, and work with them directly to develop the plan for how we're going to solve this local issue. It's also important for us to work with youth. And what's unique is that we are able to both combine youth, adults, and seniors into intergenerational problem-solving teams. They all do a lot of surveying. We look at data, and it's important to look at data to be informed about the solutions we're suggesting. They're trained in participatory action research. We do a lot of focus groups. We feed people, provide daycare, and generally make things more fun. We collectively establish priorities and set common goals. And then once again, it's important. You hear us talking a lot about our action plans. Project activation is really important. I think a lot of times initiatives that bring people together to talk about problem solving lack the ability to create immediate change, which leads to frustration, right? Some of us have the ability to leave and go back home after this wonderful job of working to create community change, but residents don't. So it can be really frustrating if they're meeting like week to week or month to month or year to year and they don't see anything. So even if it's a $30,000 short-term project that is a mural, it is a win in the eyes of the community because we're not like the other folks who came before who said that they were going to do something and didn't do that. It also helps because it is important for us to actually invest in long-term policy change, and that can take a really, really long time. So these short tangible wins help everyone stay motivated that it's possible. And then it's also important for us to invest in sustainability, just thinking through large partnerships that can sustain this initiative because, change doesn't happen overnight. And it's also important for us to think through design iteration. We're always refining year to year to just make sure we're meeting our goals. So I've said a lot, and in some, I just wanted to kind of share where our investment in New York so far. NSI works in neighborhood stat. We work to enhance public safety, over 30 public housing developments, as you all heard. We have in the past few years been able to expand that proof of concept into East Harlem. East Harlem at one point, I believe 2/3 of all the violent crime came from East Harlem. Neighborhoods that when it first started was focused on a development by development level. We all know that public safety is a neighborhood level issue. And so it really, with funding from federal government, we were able to expand this initiative on a neighborhood level with youth, specifically from 3 warring developments to build relationships. And now they're working on originally like 3 youth who would never be seen with each other now call each other friends, and they're working on an anti-gang, anti-gun violence campaign for the whole neighborhood. And what we've heard, and we've yet to see the report, is that investments like this on a neighborhood level has reduced crime in the last year. Oh, should I omit Amaya? And then lastly, Green Space Connections is another program that really allows us to expand our proof of concept on a large scale capital project level. With investment from the Hemsley Foundation, we're able to look at public housings like thousands of acres of green space and work with residents and once again cross-sector partners to rethink how playgrounds, barbecue areas, green areas where residents want to be, dog parks can be reimagined and definitely built to last. And yeah, so with that, I'd like to turn it over to Courtney.
Well, thanks very much to both of you.
Please, we'll just stop sharing and hopefully we can answer questions. I know there was one in the chat that someone had that I was gonna.
Thank you so much. Commissioners, questions, please. If you see one in the chat, I don't.
Yeah, so there was one on the chat that got addressed, particularly around the demographics. So who exactly, and it kicked me out, so I don't have it on here. Can you read it out loud?
Yeah.
Because it kicked me out and then I didn't know.
Kathleen, I don't know if you want to share, come off mute, or if you would like me to read.
Whose question was it?
Kathleen.
Absolutely happy to. Yeah, I think I was just curious, and thank you so much for the presentation. And it's really incredible and inspiring work. As working within working for a workforce development organization, just thinking about how you identify folks within the communities. There seems to be some level of organic work, but I also know that there are workforce development organizations that are working locally in communities to help folks identify ways to solve problems in their own community. So just curious about whether any formal partnerships have been, if you've had any formal partnerships with workforce development organizations to help identify some of the talent to lead some of this work in the localized communities.
Yeah, so Courtney, would you like to answer that or? Okay. I think there's a lot of local, in terms of the localized communities, there's like a lot of like local partnerships that are being created with like Workforce One, Jobs Plus. I know there's like jobs everywhere. I'm very familiar with CEO as well. And and I'm enamored with your work. But it has been on a very like local level because so much of our work starts with communities or residents identifying what their priority areas are and how they want to address it comes up in a lot of different ways that it really varies from location to location. I think for instance, in Staten Island, we have a workforce development partner there who has like a very good understanding of like the challenges of the barriers to entry for a lot of the programs that are offered to them, literacy, higher, just like, just GED or, college degree. I think even youth opportunities like Green City Force, which is a green jobs like youth training program, requires a high school diploma as a form of entry. And so depending on the neighborhood, some stakeholders will definitely work with like, a local partner like that. But what's an interesting trend is that knowing that there are these barriers to entry, there has been a shift in a lot of adults and youth actually asking for entrepreneurship training. And so we've since partnered with Lloyd and why can't I remember the name of the organization right now, but it's from Lloyd, and he worked with us in Brownsville and Red Hook in training local entrepreneurs in developing their business plan, formalizing their business, creating a website, getting their bios, all of those things, registering as a MWEE, if that makes sense. And since then, that initiative has been so successful that the city has adopted that program, and it's now a citywide program called the Blueprint Project. So that's an interesting trend in that because some of the existing kind of workforce development opportunities have not been as easy for people to access, that the trend has been, definitely like entrepreneurship training, or especially youth training in definitely like different trades or different skills. Like, they want to make music, they want to learn fashion, they want to learn cosmetology. Yeah, but I'm also interested to learn from you being CEO, what you've seen.
Thank you so much. That's really helpful. I'm actually with Cara Collective, but we know CEO very well. Sam and I are great buds, and really, really admire the work that he does nationally. But yeah, I mean, I think that and it's sort of why I asked the question, right? So many of our folks either have transportation challenges, but are also thinking about ways to give back to their community and see a change in their community. They talk about transforming their lives as well as their communities. And so thinking about this as an opportunity to plant two trees with one seed, to use the less violent version of kill two birds with one stone. I think that it would be just such a great opportunity to think about a pipeline of folks to think about, how do you become someone who's fighting on a different side of justice and community organizing. So I just think it's an interesting pathway to consider, just being much more explicit about a partnership there. So I was just curious. Thank you for sharing.
can I take one more second to talk about our East Harlem Community Safety Initiative?
Please.
Yeah, so what you brought up just reminded me that so a key part of that action plan of that initiative is both seniors and youth stakeholders coming together to understand why gang and gun violence exists in Harlem. And the senior and the adult stakeholder team actually took a step back to support the youth, 5 from each warring development, to identify an action plan project that they wanted to invest in. And the youth actually, to your point, identified that they wanted to be trained in something that they could get a job in. They wanted a job where they could address the safety issues in East Harlem. And they definitely wanted to do something creative to celebrate their neighborhood afterwards. All that to say, a key part of that action plan project is 3 cohorts, youth coming together, and they go away from their neighborhood in order to be able to form bonds and remove themselves from the politics of their neighborhood. And then they come back and they're trained in like conflict resolution, generally peacekeeping. Essentially, they're being trained as junior violence interrupters because there are kind of CMS programs in that neighborhood willing to hire them if they are trained and are able to kind of like graduate to the next level. So that was very intentional in that initiative, because the youth were seeing that this was something that they could be trained and paid to be like organizers creating change in their neighborhood. So hopefully we'll have more to report at the end of that cohort.
That's really exciting to hear. Thank you for sharing.
We did have another question by Commissioner Alston. Well, there's 2 of them. Courtney, what have you seen as an essential elements of shifting more to a focus for solution outside of the criminal legal system? And Layman, can you say more about how your work with the community residents to partner with existing governmental entities and institutions to resolve their problems while holding agency? So Courtney, if you want to begin.
I'll go first. And thank you again, Commissioner Alston. I think you and I sat next to each other in an event in DC and had some nice.
Yes, we did.
Yes, I think that's, so thank you for suggesting that we come today. So I think it's a few things. One is, with the community justice approach that we have had at the center for a number of years, that's been very focused on the court and the sort of legal institution. While we were in the community and certainly engaging the community, both relying on and engaging the community in delivering justice in the courthouse, that sort of focus meant that we were very focused on the need, addressing the needs of individuals coming into the court, as opposed to thinking about what does this community need to be safe beyond what a court or the legal system could possibly provide. And so it sort of, I think, grew out of the work that we were doing within the legal system, a recognition that if we want to do real community based problem solving, real community safety, we have to, look at the community itself outside the walls of the court and focus efforts there. And, it's both about preventing crime. This is a strategy to prevent crime, to keep people from coming into the court system in the first place. And I think does sort of recognize that safety and justice don't just live in the legal system. In fact, that's often where, unfortunately, that's, as you all know, many of you know that the legal system just catches everybody who hasn't been able to achieve safety and justice in their neighborhoods. And so if we were really interested in community-based, community safety and justice, then that's where we needed to look. And it's not an exclusive thing. So, what's happening in some of our the neighborhoods where we work, both here in New York, and I hope, and I'm really eager to see if we could help bring this to our national the partners that we have, or the community courts that we work with nationally, is how to build a complementary community and sort of resident-led public safety strategy in addition to the community justice work happening within the court system, or that community-based court as well. So that's what I would say is kind of the where it came from, and sort of why we have moved in that direction, because we're really looking at what does the community need as opposed to what is the legal, kind of looking at the system needs, and how we organize ourselves as systems. Layman, do you want to take the next question about working with community residents and government?
Oh, yeah.
An agency, that's yeah, the most important part of that question.
Yeah, it's a really important question, and I hope we try and do it every day, and hope that yeah, I hope we are we're holding ourselves to it. But you know, it's for NSI, racial and social justice is really important in the framework of how we do this work. And I know a lot of people say that they're trying to work themselves out of a job, but generally everyone on this team sees themselves as in service of the community, which means that we think about our positionality, who holds power, who gets to make decisions, and who has a seat at the table, and who gets to be the face of all of this. So we very intentionally have organizers who are trained as facilitators, and in these meetings, everything from who gets to decide on the project that is invested in, how that project is designed, you know, who the partners are, selection of the designer. We facilitate that discussion, but it's a very democratic process in which the residents make that decision.
Layman, how do you do that though, when you have to have a government? I think this may be what you're getting at, Commissioner, which is a government agency has to then deliver on that. And usually it's government that's deciding what they want to solve. Is that right?
I think it's a little bit both. One
Okay.
is exactly the power dynamic when you've got multiple stakeholders that include not only community residents and community stakeholders, but also if it's a public-private partnership, then you generally will have some type of governmental entity, whether it's workforce development for WIO or funding for jobs and training and that type of thing, or some other type of major institution that could potentially be an employer or a resource provider external of the community. So in those cases, given one, balancing the agency and power of the community members, but also recognizing what can so easily happen when there are powerful other actors in this partnership, right? Who may very well say, yeah, we hear you, we like what you're saying, but this funding stream dictates ABC, or our budget says these are the parameters of this agreement into which we are entering. So to me, the idea of trying to hold agency, one, in terms of identifying what problems are important, because if you think about philanthropic entities, the problems that grantees and other small CBOs, et cetera, may see as the important things to solve may not be the same things that the grantor prioritizes.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm gonna say something very idealistic, and Courtney did not pay me to say this, but maybe she did. But we are generally very privileged to be working at the Center for Justice Innovation. And because it's an organization that have been around for 25 years, this and our project in particular has been very lucky in that we can leverage both the funding and the government partnerships that come with that funding, in addition to other project sites and what those resources are in the center to balance out what maybe we're not able to do with specific funding that NSI is allocated. A very good example of this is as a part of this mayoral initiative in which we are working in public housing. And if anyone has heard about public housing in New York City, it's like, I think now the estimate is $70 billion deficit. So not dissimilar to, I think, in Chicago, just like areas where there's just high concentration of poverty, Black and brown people living in conditions that really require a lot of attention. And so for us, it's like they lead to public safety issues in which we're very focused on. But then residents are also come to us with issues around, just repair issues. Like we are working, let's say a tenant association vice president hasn't had heat in 4 years. So she's been heating her apartment with her oven. It's not a part of our initiative to be able to address that, and we can't. But the wonderful thing about being a part of a larger institution is that I know that there's a sister site in which they have a housing resource center, and I could leverage that relationship and bridge and we can act as the bridge to maybe like another resource agency partner or CBO that can address the thing that our current funding might not be able to address.
But
Yeah,
Thank you.
I have just so thank you both so much. I think for me, there's two parts that are of great interest. So in the transforming spaces, I am a firm believer that it does transform communities. If we have spaces where people can utilize the spaces and you see the funding and the economic development done right, it changes things in many ways. Where do you leverage the funding? Is it with your partnership with government? Is there other stakeholders that kind of help in that endeavor?
Actually, I mean, you should, I'll be at high level and then Layman, you should talk more specifically. I think that, so certainly government is the main funder for neighborhood safety initiatives in one particular agency, but the work over time has then lent itself to other funding sources, whether it's other government agencies, other private funders. So it has kind of created a center of gravity that other investors can make investments in. So the Green Space Connections project that Layman was sharing, that's essentially a foundation gave us, it's the Fund for Public Housing. I think they have a new name now, but they fundraised to then put out an RFP and to make a selection of an organization that could implement on that. And because we are already in those developments and doing this work, it just made sense for us there. So I would say at a high level, and depending on the development, been able to attract, some funding and sort of offshoot projects that are funded by other sources. But Layman, can you give examples of that, or where, I may?
Yeah, just kind of adding to that, and then what's interesting about like trying to hold agency for community residents against maybe like the wishes of a government entity or a partner or a funder. People have come to NSI and the Center for Justice Innovation because we have been able to in very unique spaces, be innovative where government have not been, or maybe other city agencies or, you know, CBO partners have not been. So in terms of NYCHA, you know, and this is just a very legal thing, we were able to leverage a unique kind of like contract or MOU or license agreement with the city to say that, you know, we're working with residents to kind of create these open-ended, unique projects. And because we're a nonprofit, we're able to do a lot more than a city agency can with capital dollars. Thank you so much, the New York City Housing Authority. So that's our large public housing entity. And so we're able to do what I think typically it takes a long time for city agencies to do. So we can do a lot more with very little in a really short period of time because we're not beholden to the city system, bureaucratic system. Because of that, we've kind of gained that notoriety. And when the opportunity for private funding to come along, and the public-private arm of our public housing authority wanted to make the case for private investments in public housing that could have a large impact with community being co-designers of those spaces. They turned to us because we're crazy enough to say that we can do it in less than 2 years. And so, you know, it is an interesting space in that a lot of the desires to change policy also are able only to happen because we have people in roles where they have the same goals of leveraging like community as a key part to making that change. I will also say that we got very lucky with that Green Space Connections grant because it came at the recommendation of a resident. NYCHA at the time and this funding, public-private funding arm was going to local leaders and saying that they had this funding opportunity. And if they knew of any CBO they'd like to partner with, and they recommended us because we were already working there and had done things like turnaround basketball courts or murals or creating community gardens. So we were trusted in the community. And so it was really lucky. We're very privileged that that was a recommendation specifically from a resident.
Okay. Thank you so much. The second question that I had, it looks like the community-driven piece and the participatory process is at the core of a lot of your presentation. And that partnership and that creation seems what is like that special sauce in ensuring that anything that's done is done with the community and not just necessarily, like to your point and what you've stated before, a top-down approach. I think we've had similar initiatives in the city of Chicago through their participatory budgeting, but it has come under criticism because they say that it only works for those that show up. So it could be 90,000 residents in a ward, but if only like 10 people, 15 people fill out surveys or are part of the process, it is only what they want. So oftentimes it's almost like a double-edged sword. You want to work with community, but you want to ensure that there is true engagement that is productive. So have there been challenges with that component? What have been the lessons learned around that, and how have you all ensured the involvement of all community members? I know you mentioned the youth piece, but I'm wondering just like in general, everybody.
Yeah, so for us, we have really ambitious goals and with our community engagement because there are in NYCHA on paper, there's 400,000 people who live in public housing in New York City, over 300 something developments. We're in 30 of them. So if you can imagine, there's a lot of people who live in these developments. And so we set very ambitious goals for us. Because we are able to hire community organizers, not just project managers who manage a project. And if they're good organizers, they know that it's an important part of their work, but it's not in their job description. So they add those extra hours knowing that it will make their work that much more impactful. But, you know, for us, we're hiring specifically people who will spend that time engaging with the community and building relationships. So we hire those people, we set very ambitious goals of looking at the demographics and saying that we need to meet at minimum 5% of the population to come out to our events. So for participatory budgeting, we kick it off with a massive block party, resource fair, participatory voting like events. And then there's now 1 month worth of voting in which we're set to meet, our goal is 15% of the population, and we meet and exceed that every year. I'm sure depending on the resident you talk to, that's probably not enough. But for that, it means that for 15% for 15 developments, we're reaching in a 3 to 4 month period over 20,000 people. And that's probably more than the folks who vote for their elected officials. So we really try and do an intentional job of making sure that the folks, like, no one can say that they weren't involved or they didn't see that flyer or, you know, that it wasn't available to them because, you know, they were working at the time. We are not 9 to 5. We meet community where they are. All our events are at nights and weekends. We also try to make things a little bit more accessible by digitizing our ballots. And so there are QR codes posted everywhere that we share and text to people. And yeah, so that's how we try and make sure that it's a very democratic, inclusive process. Yeah.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. This has been a fascinating presentation, and we're grateful for the lessons that you have learned that you are sharing with us. We too believe that our commission's mission includes leveraging our thought leadership. So to reciprocate in this fashion is very much consistent with our view of our work. As we look forward, what you've done, although I hear you say that you operate nationally, much of what you've talked about today is local within New York. So as you expand nationally and add value over the last 25 years to places local and not local, I'm just curious about what sort of a role you might play in continuing to educate us or work with us. It seems to me that your success has derived from your collaboration with partners, including thought partners, but governmental agencies, nonprofits, communities themselves. You've also served as a catalyst where, were it not for your initiative, things would not have happened or would not have played out the way they have. And then you're obviously serving as a convener. You're bringing together the players, the necessary or desirable stakeholders to drive change within communities. And you're doing it in a data-driven way. So as we work together as a commission and as we reach out to you to see what ways we might work together going forward, is it fair to think of you as a consultancy? Is it fair to think about you as a granting agency? Is it fair to think about you as somebody that might help us piece together the financial parts of the puzzle, define objectives, determine what's realistic, what isn't, based on your experience? I'm just throwing out a few examples. How should we be thinking about your organization as it might inform our work and allow us to avoid some missteps that otherwise we might take absent the information that you already have?
Yeah. One of the reasons I was excited about this invitation is because this is part of our model, which is in one of the early slides where we give the three legs of the stool essentially of our organization. It is helping, people around the country to implement what's right in their neighborhood, but based on some of the work that we've been able to do on the ground, and then evaluated here in New York. And so that's really our arm of the organization. that is kind of taking some of what we've learned on the ground and then working, as you said, as a consultant. I sort of think of us that in that way, and wearing that hat is, and we do that, with government stakeholders, most especially, but also kind of collaborations of government and community leaders who are looking at ways to improve their safety, improve outcomes in the legal system. So yes, so I think we can absolutely do that. And generally we are either funded to do that by a grant, or we have certainly worked and would work with jurisdictions who are interested in how can we work together, to raise the funding that's needed to support the work, and kind of even think about how to raise funding even for the planning, the planning phase of something like this. So very eager, especially with this work, the community safety work, eager to to find an audience and help other jurisdictions adapt this for their communities if they find value in it.
Yeah, so when I talked about your bio, Courtney, I emphasized, and not inadvertently, your $80 million annual budget and your 600 employees. So
It's
what if
even
we
bigger
wanted to-
now.
What if it's bigger now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we don't even have to go bigger. So I'm happy here it is. So if we want some of that, how do we go about getting it?
Well, we have, you asked if we were a grantee. I mean, all of that budget is really to deliver, it's funding that we receive, mostly government funding, but some private funding as well. And a lot of the sort of, early stage ideas are funded privately. And so that, that budget is all for hiring our staff who are both doing, like Layman and her team, who are doing, direct work on the ground in New York, as well as our researchers, and then the team of national, I call it our national initiatives team, which is doing a lot of the consulting work with jurisdictions around the country. So I think, I would absolutely welcome a chance to talk with you all more about what we could
Let's
do.
do that. So
Yeah.
your consulting, I just want to be clear about it so everybody understands. Is your consulting pro bono?
Well, I wouldn't say it's pro bono, but I would say we are happy to talk and think about what is the best way forward and how we could support that even without funding right now, with the aim that, like, to do something good, you have to raise money to do that. And we would, be interested in working with you all to do that together.
Well, I would love to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of the other commissioners have further questions.
I mean, I would just to sort of maybe add on to that. Are you working directly now with any of the community violence interruption groups here in Chicago?
We aren't directly, because most of our work right now has been local. And in Chicago, I mean, you all, in fact, the Cure Violence. So one of the things that we also run in New York, and we started based on the experience in Chicago, the Cure Violence program, or Cure Violence model. We are one of the organizations in New York City that is running the Cure Violence program, and then sort of wrap around, complementary gun violence prevention programming in several neighborhoods in New York. And so we're in community with the organizations in Chicago that are doing that, but we're not working directly with them on implementing anything.
Yeah, Commissioner Brutus, please.
Yeah, thank you, Courtney and Layman, thank you for your presentation. I learned a lot today, so can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so I'm very thankful for being here today. I have a question. You're in, it seems like, a lot of big cities, right? I'm gonna assume, because New York is featured in your presentation packet. You talked about you're making inroads in Bronzeville, so that's Chicago, and you mentioned at the beginning that you kind of followed a little bit of the youth intervention, the restorative justice court in North Lawndale. So I'm going to assume that you're in a lot of big cities, right? in this case here in Chicago and in our work here at the county, you know, the county is really bigger than just one city, right? There's so many other municipalities in the county that when you speak of jurisdictions and your interest to work in other jurisdictions, you know, the work at the county is focused really outside of Chicago, right? So like in name a bunch of cities, right? You know, from Palatine all the way down to Harvey.
Yep.
So who's on the ground here? Because I think, you know, the interest for us here is to synergize our work with you guys, because you have a valuable, you know, outreach program here that is working to transform lives and redirect in a positive way these, you know, young people and other people.
Mhm.
So like who's on the ground here that may or may not be making those kinds of inroads into other municipalities in the county? And you mentioned a lot of your funding is also from government sources. What types of support would you need from a grant perspective to actually, you know, do the work in the other municipalities in the county's jurisdiction and not just Chicago?
Well, let me just clarify. I didn't realize Chicago has a Brownsville, because New York has a Brownsville, and that was the Brownsville. That was the Brownsville I was talking about.
I was excited. I was like,
Yeah, I know. No.
I wrote down what address is that basketball court?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
so,
about that.
so the NSI, and it came from, you know, again, it came from the mayor's office. Layman kind of mentioned the mayor's action plan. This really was a mayoral initiative initially, not necessarily neighborhood safety initiatives alone, but to really look at how do we measure, or how do we, first of all, take an addition to law enforcement approach to creating safety, and then how do we measure more than just arrests and prosecutions and prison as our, you know, measure of success. So there's a whole kind of initiative that we could share that was really government sort of coming up with this vision, but obviously based on a lot of work that they've done in partnership with nonprofits over the years. So the work we're doing on the ground, actually this community safety work right now, most of it is in New York City, but we are doing, we do have boots on the ground right now, just to think about a town outside of a big city. In New Rochelle, for example, it is a little upstate. It's a similar thing to the county. You know, it's in technically a different county, but it's the same dynamic that you're talking about. So we're kind of adapting something that we've done at scale in, you know, a large city to doing it in a much smaller community, which is really exciting. And we're at the early stages of that. And the way we got that work funded on the ground was we got a congressional appropriation. We've been cobbling together a bunch of funding, a congressional appropriation. We got a private funder, a family foundation here who is interested in this issue in this area. We have now the city council has put up some funding for it. And we really started doing it just kind of, you could call it pro bono or like on spec, that we just thought the conditions are right. We want to help. We can, you know, we'll figure out how to raise the money to do it. In terms of the work we do outside of the kind of New York area, we have worked in every state, I think, except for Mississippi, in rural jurisdictions, in small towns, in big cities across the United States. But the caveats are, one, we don't have boots on the ground there. So what we're doing is our teams are consultants working with, you know, the local partners to come up with this, you know, the plans, the strategic planning, both for the substance and, you know, thinking about funding. Often we are coming in because they have secured funding, but we certainly are doing work, you know, to even in certain jurisdictions that we have deeper roots in, to help come up with the funding plan to support not just our role, which would be much smaller than what you really need is the funding to support the work on the ground, you know? And so there are ways that, you know, we might be able to help think with you all on that. And And the other caveat is that we're kind of in the earlier days of taking these lessons. You know, NSI has really only been around for like 4 or 5 years. So we're really like, we've got some momentum. We have some evaluation. There's been some expansion. We're kind of now at a place where we feel like, all right, we think we can go talk to other jurisdictions about how, you know, what these essential elements are of this work and how to support them in doing it. So it's kind of early days of us focusing on national, you know, helping other jurisdictions around the country to implement something like this. But we've been doing national kind of consulting and implementation of justice reforms for, you know, our whole existence. So I think have, you know, quite a lot of experience doing it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? Thank you. With your permission, Madam Chair, I think it would be useful to move into our working groups and specifically Harry and Wendy, because I think I would like to hear our guests hear the story, and I'd love to pick their brains about what they might say about it. So Courtney and Layman, we operate through working groups. And today, actually, we're going to be hearing from 2 of our working groups. One of them is Dr. Alston and Ms. DeBoe's working group on public safety and community wellness. And I think that's very much within your wheelhouse. So I don't know which of you wanted to report on where you're at, but I'd love to kind of get their input or immediate reaction to what we're up to. And that may be the spark we need to figure out what an early relationship might look like. So Harry, is that something you want to pick up on? Wendy, I'll leave it to the 2 of you.
I had asked Wendy to kind of pick the ball up today since I'm not there in person.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so
Commissioner DeBoe,
Harry,
thank you.
now that you've been able to join, just jump in, and also Dr. Selwyn Rogers.
Yes, I do want to also mention, Dr. Selwyn Rogers is with us. He runs the trauma center at University of Chicago Medicine. And he's been an invaluable participant in our deliberations and planning around this space within this working group in particular. So I very much appreciate your being with us, Dr. Rogers, and invite you to contribute to this conversation as well to the extent you'd like to. So Wendy, thank you.
Yeah, okay, so this will be good for our group, our commission, but also glad that we can cover these bases with you too. So the last we left off, this is like a tense drama here. The last that we left off at our last briefing for the commission, as you know, we had been working diligently for many, many months to try to get together with the Cook County Stroger Hospital Trauma Center. And so for our speakers today, the background there, Courtney and Layman, is this working group of ours had a hypothesis, if you will, that if we could work closely with the trauma center at the county hospital, where you have really a lot of the victims and perpetrators that are victims and perpetrators of gun violence in the county where they are being treated, if we could better sort of understand what Cook County Trauma Center might need in terms of resources that they could utilize in the trauma center to connect patients once they leave from the trauma center to better community resources and community organizations and community partners. And we could sort of enhance that seam with more resources. Perhaps we could really do something here as a commission that would really help reduce the cycle of violence in the communities that are most affected by violence in Cook County, particularly on the west side of Chicago. Long story short there, Cook County Hospital is working on a lot of different things right now, so we have not been able to dig deep into that. And so we are very lucky to have with us Dr. Selwyn Rogers, who not only is running the trauma center at the University of Chicago's medical hospital, he founded the trauma center, and he came and testified at our commission and has gotten very involved. We work on a couple of different projects together on reducing violence in the city. And he said, that's a terrific idea. And so maybe that's something that we can explore down and on the south side of the city. So not the county hospital, but nonetheless in Cook County. And also in neighborhoods that have a lot of need. So we are now game on in discussing that with Dr. Rogers related to the trauma center down at the University of Chicago Hospital. So what I can say so far is just yesterday, Harry and Selwyn and I sat down with the head of Chapin Hall, which you all may be familiar with. Chapin Hall is the social services Research and Policy Institute of the University of Chicago. So we were lucky enough to have a first conversation together with Brian Samuels, who runs Chapin Hall, and then his chief sort of policy and strategy point, a guy named Michael Kale, and kind of started a conversation yesterday to say, if we as a county commission come together with trauma hospital, with a Chapin Hall, with other resources and other partners, what kind of impact could we have? What levers can the county push in terms of bringing more funding to bear, potentially in terms of advocating, in terms of policy, in terms of ordinance, in terms of, just bringing attention, visibility to an issue, and what would we want to try to do? So we have a lot of ideas that we sketched and we committed to ourselves as a group to kind of give it a minute and some thought, let it all sink in and start to take a look at what kinds of things we would prioritize first. What kinds would they be interventions that we would be trying to support when folks leave the trauma hospital, go back into community? Would it be some kind of research that could be helpful as a first step to inform what we would do? So we got a lot of ideas on the table, and we're kind of take a minute and then discuss it. My guess is we might have even more of a broad direction, Harry, so but maybe by the next commission meeting, we'd have something we can come back with.
Yeah, if I, great explanation, Wendy.
Yeah.
If I could add anything, it would be too often with respect to victims of trauma, broadly speaking, firearm-related injuries specifically, we have a snapshot in time when the injury happens. We don't look forward in time what happens to those people. And at a critique of media, for example, there's very little story about what happened, how they got there, right? What were the events that led up to the injury? What was the context? What was the larger system that placed an individual at risk to have a bullet go through parts of their body in the end? And one of the challenging situations that I face as a trauma surgeon that is personally devastating is to invest a lot of physical, emotional, intellectual resources to save a life and restore function, and to literally physically heal that person, or be part of healing that person. And then you see them boomerang back dead in the same trauma hospital that you provided here. It is a devastating for that person, for their family, for their community, and for us as healers. And many people feel dejected when that happens because we say, we've done all this stuff, but haven't really made any difference. One of the other things that came up, and Harry, Wendy, and I will discuss it further with the leaders at Chapin Hall, is the retrospective still, if you will. So someone's now 21 and they're criminal justice involved. But Chapin Hall has a lot of data about involvement in child and welfare services, involvement in schools, truancy rates. It'd be interesting to take a snapshot in time again, and a vantage point, and go back to what was that kid's life at 4 and 7 and 9 and 13, and other things that could have been done to intervene to make a difference in that young person's life. And early indications are, indeed they are, because any one of those time points, there are multiple touches that schools, government, health systems have with humans that do or do not alter their life. And if we're gonna do something fundamentally different to deal with seemingly intractable problems, we should be more intentional about the work that we do. I don't know if you want to add anything, Harry?
Well, I would just say a lot of our conversation yesterday, first of all, and this will resonate with both Courtney and Layman, is that it was about the intersectionality of all these different systems that often the young men and women or older men and women that we're talking about come in touch with, that violence in whatever form may have touched or that creates in any way some considerations about public safety in the community. So we're very conscious that the approaches that we take have to, one, be really time proximate to addressing these immediate issues, but also understanding that we have to go upstream and kind of take a look at other intercept points in terms of interventions. As Selwyn said the other day, you know, we have prescriptions for a lot of the things that we need to repair, so to speak, in a trauma center. But there are a lot of things for which we don't have prescriptions that are more systemic. And part of a conversation that Brian and I were chatting as we were heading down the hall is that, you know, there are a lot of folks that build programs. But if you don't have the infrastructure outside of the programs end, typically, right? Because the nature of funding cycles and why they get named as programs. But you need an infrastructure beyond that to have sustainability and systems change. So the things that we're talking about are both participatory. They are intended to really bring voice to members of the community, but at the same time try to address more immediate problems, but then go upstream as well. So that's what I would add. So we were talking about quite a bit.
I'm sorry, I put a note in the chat. I just wanted to say, I apologize. I have to get to an event tonight. I'd much rather be sitting here than having to, you know, schmooze.
I'm very grateful that you made the time you have made, both of you, Courtney and Layman, and we will certainly continue this conversation with you. And thanks for your
Yes.
contributions today, and thanks for your leadership in all respects. And we'll be in touch. And
Okay.
I'm grateful. And I, when your time permits, I think all of us would love to hear your reaction to what you've heard from this working group.
I think that would be great. And I will say, just so you're aware, if it's helpful to any of you, I'm planning to come to Chicago, December 6th, 7th, and 8th to meet with a few people. And so welcome if that, you know, if there's any interest or desire to make time to meet in person during that time, I would really welcome it. So
Appreciate the offer, and we will absolutely take you up on that.
okay. Great. Well, thank you again, and look forward to the next step.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks to
All right,
both of
Thank
you.
you.
Very
Bye-bye.
grateful to you.
Everyone,
So with respect to the work of the working group, is there anything else we should cover as a group today?
I don't think so. I think we've got some
Oh, my
more fish to fry before we.
Okay, well, I will be frying those fish with you next time. I apologize that I wasn't available yesterday. It was a family situation just unavoidable. But, so I will be along for the ride.
But it's good. We're cooking with gas.
I hear that.
I'll cook in now.
Thank you. And Selma, particularly grateful for you because I know time is at a premium for you. And we're very grateful for everything you do.
Important work.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, perhaps we can then move on to our other working group.
Yeah,
I'd like to
absolutely.
have a different idea. So Commissioner Cooley, with respect to your work as it relates to the community asset ownership, I guess we've used different labels for your group. We have to come up with something. We have to get to a moniker that lasts, that has legs. But for present purposes, what would you like to share with us?
Sure. Well, after the last meeting, we were able to sit down, Commissioner Lane and Commissioner Naya, and Harry was able to come as well, and talk through kind of what actual the policy recommendation be. So looking at, I guess, maybe something like community and public assets, really reflecting on the conversation today and how much input is needed from community and like not just dropping these things in, but really wanting to hear from folks again. Really looking at what are the assets that are in many communities, but are not, are mostly provided by private services in many communities, but are not in many communities as well. Think about grocers, pharmacies, affordable housing, childcare, internet services, even green infrastructure, and thinking about gardens and public spaces as they were talking about today as well. And then green infrastructure, thinking about issues of adding that to the mix, thinking about stormwater, some of the things we've been dealing with regionally and locally. The imbalanced tree coverage in different areas, gardens and public spaces as well. And then being more explicit about how this connects to community safety as part of the why we're doing this. But thankful for Commissioner Naya team getting to start on the draft for the resolution.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that came out of our discussion was, we understand that we need to move into that direction. So what are our options in order to do that? And I think one of the things that we kind of settled on was, why not create some type of pilot in which we are partnering up with our academic partners in looking into creating this pilot program for them to be solely concentrated on that and building it out. So part of that process is creating a resolution. We already started on a draft. I was going to share it with you all today for feedback. The only thing I'm holding off on is because a major part of this would be under the Bureau of Economic Development. I didn't want to move forward without their approval, and least in language that they're comfortable with. So that is a little bit of a holdup. I know I'm going to be circling back with Commissioner Xochitl Flores, who's the Bureau Chief, to kind of gauge her a little bit more on this, so that we can finalize some of the language. The intention is to also look into the budget process as well for us to get this pilot program going, and if not, figuring out what the next few steps of that would be. So we are moving along with this. We're hoping that we have something a little bit more solidified. We could definitely send over once we have a better draft to you all for any suggestions or any edits that you all may recommend. Again, this will probably be partnered up with budget, so we have a resolution and hopefully a budget allocation. And we're hoping to move from there. The other thing that I do want to make sure, well, I guess that's on that. So I don't know, Roger, if there's anything else particular than the resolution, or if there's, I did want to make another recommendation on maybe their.
Oh, yeah, I think some of the thinking about this as a range of models and not just the county would have to own these assets, but that there's a way that it's how does the county support making sure these assets emerge and have continual support in these communities. In some cases, it could look like county ownership. In some cases, it could look like the county owns the building that the grocery store is in, and then that's a subsidy rent for that operator to remain in that space potentially. I'm
Right.
just thinking that there's a spectrum of opportunity there as well.
And then also on the housing piece, we talked a lot about the connection between the Cook County Land Bank and
Yep.
potentially this effort, so.
Yep.
This is already a proven concept, but expanding it and, looking at some of the deficits that we see in the communities, like how we can actually uplift and kind of help those are some of the things that we're focusing on.
Great, sorry. Oh, thank you.
If we don't have anything else on that one, I did want to just reiterate something. I had previously mentioned that the Justice Advisory Council is extremely interested in the work that we're doing. It looks like a lot of the areas that we have focused on have to do with, the justice system and alternatives to the justice system. So I had a meeting with them about a week and a half ago, and they agreed and requested again to come maybe speak to this commission on some of the work that they're doing to see if there's any overlap in which they can actually be helpful to our initiatives, given the fact that they're already under the offices under the president and they're already working on initiatives like this. So it's a better way to align our work, but also for them to support the initiatives that we have been discussing and feel very strongly about. They listen in every month, so they're excited to come back and potentially, for us to give them a few minutes to talk about some of their initiatives and some of the observations that they have seen. So I think that that's a great idea. I'm sure I'll be working with Vice Chair Lane in organizing that maybe for one of the next meetings. So that's something that's exciting because we are definitely seeing some of the offices and agencies within the county really pay attention to our discussions, and now they're wanting buy-in in the discussion, and also it's a really good sign for us to move things along. I know we've had some hiccups, for example, with the Cook County Health and some of their work that they're doing, and even scheduling a meeting with them has been a little bit hectic. So having agencies that are interested in the work makes the process a little easier, makes things move a little faster. So I'm excited to know that they're extremely interested and that they reiterated their commitment to coming out to talk to us.
Wonderful.
Yeah. Other than that, I think, are there any announcements before we close out? I know we're kind of coming in on the 2-hour mark. Anybody have any other announcements? I think the only thing for me that I would maybe just announce is we are in the budget process at the county. So last week, the president announced their budget. We may be able to send, if anybody's interested in knowing, high level part of the budget, we could definitely send over the information. We have one of the highest budgets we've had in a while. It's a $9.14 billion budget. And that is, obviously the majority goes into health and hospitals. I would say over half. So definitely a lot of the initiatives around behavioral health and some of the other work that we're doing has been prioritized. And obviously a good other chunk goes into our public safety arena. So we are working on a lot of initiatives, and we are continuing with the grants around violence prevention and recidivism prevention as well. So those are exciting things, and we can definitely send over just very general executive summaries if anybody needs it. I know the city has also announced their budget, so there's definitely a lot of moving pieces, and we're at a really good point in local government to discuss priorities. So I would just like to, just remind folks of that. While we were actually meeting, we had the public hearing upstairs. That's actually the reason why we're down here today. We got moved out of our regular location just because they have their public testimony going up upstairs. But other than that, I don't have any other announcements yet.
I don't know if you can share this, but just curious, on the public safety portion of the budget, is it, in particular, the funding from the county on the, CDIs, the county stepped up a couple of years ago, it's COVID. and added like a net new 5 million into that. And so in this next budget, are they keeping that constant? Or, you know, that goes up, that goes down?
I'm not really sure on that piece. We can check in, but I do know that, I mean, obviously, when I talk to, like, when we're talking about like just general budget, it
Yeah.
looks like it did go up a little bit, but in the specifics, I'm not quite sure. I have to kind of check in on that. Yeah. Yeah, and it could be, and honestly, we have the courthouses, so although we don't necessarily mandate them, we are the ones that fund the courthouses, public defender, public guardian, the state attorney's office, and obviously things under like the Justice Advisory Council, so there's definitely a lot of pieces, I can check in on that and maybe get back to you. I know that there has been a continuous increase in a lot of the programming, given the fact that, you know, we still have ARPA funding that could kind of help us out with initiatives. It's one of the reasons why we have seen so many programs and so many initiatives that maybe the county has never seen before. We've been helping with mortgage assistance, with foreclosure prevention, with other social initiatives that have been really helpful during the pandemic. But we all understand that, you know, come, you know, FY 2026, those are going to be phased out. So we're definitely going to be we want to make sure, I know at least on my end, to make sure we have a good infrastructure for when the funding is gone, that some of the most crucial programs are not impacted. So we're working on that, and we can get back to you on the specifics if I can, yeah. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay. Without any.
Very productive meeting. Thanks
Okay,
one and all.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by,
Motion to the board.
okay. Commissioner DeVoe and second by Commissioner Brutus. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Good second.
Thank you, we're adjourned.
Thank you very much. Stay safe, everybody.
The city budget is 16.6.
Yeah. Wait, what was the next year?
16.4.